What if I told you that Think and Grow Rich isn't actually about getting rich? I know, that's the part that stops most people. They hear rich and think money. But Napoleon Hill was never talking just about dollars. He was talking about destiny. He was talking about conscious control over your reality. And the people who've truly mastered his teachings, they don't walk around flashing wealth. They walk around with certainty, unshakable certainty, the kind that bends circumstances, that magnetizes results, that makes you pause and ask, what do they know that I don't? And the answer is simple. They know how to think. But let's not confuse that with overthinking or positive vibes only mantras. No, this is deeper. Hill was onto a system of mental engineering long before we had the science to explain it. A system designed not just to motivate you, but to reprogram you. Let's peel back the layers. Hill begins his book with the principle of desire, but not the kind of desire that flickers. He means the kind that burns, an all-consuming vision so alive in your imagination that it haunts you. It keeps you up. It pulls you forward. It becomes more real than your current circumstances. And here's where the first real shift happens. Most people treat desire like a lottery ticket. Maybe I'll get lucky. But Napoleon Hill demands something else. He demands specificity, a clearly defined goal backed by a plan, energized by faith, and driven by repetition. That's where autosuggestion enters the scene. This is Hill's most mystical and most misunderstood idea. Autosuggestion is not just affirmation, it's incantation. It's when you impress a thought so deeply into your subconscious that it becomes a directive, a command. Over time, your mind stops questioning it. It obeys. Modern neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape itself based on repeated experiences, thoughts, and emotions. But Hill didn't need an MRI machine to know what worked. He tested it on real people, thousands of them, for 25 years. He studied Edison, Carnegie, Ford, Rockefeller. These weren't lucky men. They were wired differently. But that wiring wasn't genetic. It was intentional. Let's go even deeper. Hill tells you to write out your goal in present tense, to describe the exact amount of money, the exact date, the exact service you'll give in return, and to read it out loud twice a day. Why? Because when your conscious mind speaks with conviction, your subconscious listens. Over time, what feels like imagination begins to feel like memory, and the body follows memory more easily than fantasy. You begin to walk, talk, and make decisions as if the future is already real. That's not delusion, that's called alignment. But here's where most people stop. They write the goal once, say it a few times, then life gets in the way. And when it doesn't work instantly, they quit. But repetition isn't just a trick, it's the activation key. The brain doesn't believe what's true, it believes what's familiar. You must make your vision more familiar than your fear. Now let's talk about faith, Hill's second principle. Again, not religious faith, though it overlaps. He means belief. Belief in your ability to turn thought into form. But what happens if you don't believe? What if you failed before? What if deep down you think this kind of success just isn't for people like you? That's where Carol Dweck picks up the conversation. Her work on the growth mindset shows us that belief isn't static, it's built. That people who succeed aren't born more capable, they're just more willing to adapt, to fail, to grow. They believe intelligence and talent are starting points, not ceilings. And that's the silent villain in most lives. A fixed mindset disguised as realism. I'm just not cut out for this. I've never been good at that. Maybe it's too late for me. These aren't facts. These are beliefs dressed as facts. And Hill knew that beliefs, repeated long enough, become commands. You see, faith isn't something you either have or don't have. It's something you train. By choosing better thoughts, by repeating better words, by acting in alignment before you feel ready. Every time you do that, you cast a vote for a new identity. And if that sounds familiar, you've probably read James Clear. Clear's book, Atomic Habits, takes Hill's concepts and runs them through a behavioral science lens. He teaches us that we don't rise to our goals, we fall to our systems. That small, consistent actions shape our identity over time. In other words, your habits are proof of who you believe you are. If you say you want to be a writer, but you never write, that gap isn't laziness, it's identity dissonance. Your actions always follow your most dominant self-concept. That's why Hill's principle of decision is so crucial. He said successful people make decisions quickly and change them slowly, while failures make decisions slowly and change them often. Why? Because indecision breeds doubt. Doubt creates hesitation. And hesitation, that's the breeding ground for fear. You're not failing because you lack motivation. You're failing because your inner narrative hasn't changed. So, let's say you combine Hill's burning desire, Dweck's growth mindset, and Clear's identity-based habits. What happens? You don't just change your mindset, you change your wiring. Let's talk about persistence, Hill's fourth principle, and possibly the hardest one. Because this is where the dream meets resistance. You lose the job. The client says no. Your bank account laughs at your vision board. And everything in you screams, maybe I'm just not meant for this. But Hill says that's exactly the moment when the tide is about to turn. That most people quit 3 feet from gold. The truth is, you're not being tested for punishment. You're being tested for readiness. Are you emotionally equipped to handle what you're asking for? Can you remain faithful to your vision when reality contradicts it? Because persistence is not about grinding harder. It's about believing longer. Now let's explore one of Hill's most intriguing ideas, the sixth sense. No, he wasn't talking about seeing dead people. He was referring to the intuitive voice, the whisper that guides you when logic has no answer. Today we call this pattern recognition, your brain's ability to detect meaning and chaos drawn from a lifetime of subconscious observations. When you immerse yourself in a goal, when you feed your mind with purpose, clarity, and repetition, you unlock this intuitive sense. You just know when something feels right or wrong. You start making decisions that don't make sense until they do. The sixth sense is your reward for alignment. It's your brain saying, I trust you now, let's go deeper. But this wouldn't be complete without talking about environment. Hill emphasized the mastermind, a group of individuals who elevate your thinking, who challenge you, who mirror your potential. Today we understand this through the lens of mirror neurons and emotional contagion. The people you spend time with literally influence your thoughts, your feelings, your identity. If you're surrounded by complainers, cynics, and victims, you will start thinking like them. Not because you agree with them, but because your brain wants to belong. You must protect your input like your future depends on it, because it does. Every podcast, every conversation, every piece of content, It's all coding your subconscious. You are either feeding the future you want or reinforcing the reality you're trying to escape. And that's the real reason Think and Grow Rich still matters. Because it's not just a book. It's not a philosophy. It's a blueprint for rewiring your life. When Hill says thoughts are things, he doesn't mean every thought manifests instantly. He means thoughts are seeds. And your emotion, your belief, your repetition, they are the soil, the sunlight, and the water. Plant a strong enough thought, nurture it daily, and eventually, you won't just grow rich, you'll grow unshakable. Let's make this real.
Imagine waking up tomorrow with the faith of Napoleon Hill, the flexibility of Carol Dweck, and the systems of James Clear. You wouldn't wait for motivation, you'd act from identity. You wouldn't fear failure, you'd extract wisdom. You wouldn't rely on talent, you'd cultivate obsession. And every step forward wouldn't just be progress, it would be proof. Proof that you're becoming the kind of person success can't ignore. So what now? You don't need to read another book. You don't need another YouTube video. You need a decision. To write out your goal, to speak it out loud, to believe it before it's real, to act even when it's inconvenient, to repeat until belief becomes instinct. Because that's the real secret. It was never about riches. It was never about luck. It was about wiring. Your thoughts are electrical, your emotions are magnetic, and your results? They're just the math of what you've repeated most. So today, right now, choose a better loop. Think bigger, grow deeper, repeat until you forget who you used to be. This isn't motivation. This is metamorphosis. You were born to lead your thoughts, not be led by them. So don't just think and grow rich. Think, grow, repeat.